just, I couldn't feel anything anymore. It just all went to shit. Even to a point when I was walking around and I was getting cramp in my back just from walking. Because if someone comes into you one day, has bad news, the whole body's gonna be weak as fuck. Actually, anyone who actually really does care about their training, I don't think they get looked after properly. You know, the people are going to do whatever they're going to do. So it's not a case of saying to them, don't fucking squat. It's like it's having the knowledge to know how to treat them, but also how to keep them moving. So when you have pain, this is the thing you've got to decipher. As I said to you, is it an actual injury? Is it tissue? Is it structural? Is it passive? Is it active? Or can it be your brain just protecting you?
Just quickly before we get into the full show, for any of you who's watched this podcast before, you will know that I am super passionate about this podcast and getting on the most interesting guests to help you get better results with your fat loss, your business, your life, and your coaching skills. But at the moment, 85% of you who watch this channel aren't subscribed to the channel. The bigger the channel gets, the better the guests get, the more high production value the show gets, as well as the clips get. So if you're watching this, please, can you click subscribe, like, comment, improve interaction so YouTube know we are a channel to be reckoned with. And then we can take over, and then I'm coming for you, Joe Rogan. So Nick, this is literally a day in the life podcast for you, walking around the house, getting an espresso. Welcome back to the show. How you doing?
I am good, man. I am good. How are you?
Mate, very well indeed. Very well indeed. So last time you came on the show, we talked a lot about the mindset stuff. We talked about resilience. We talked about a bit about your journey. And we never actually got onto the topic at hand.
Are you kidding me?
So we're now going to give this a go of round two, getting onto the original topic.
Oh, wait, sorry.
You
just froze then. I was like thinking we've been chatting for like half an hour now. Actually, longer than that.
Yeah.
And as soon as you started chatting then, it froze. I was like, oh, you can't. I can't believe that. But anyway, yeah.
You got me back?
Yeah, I got you back. I basically lost you when I said, how are you?
Oh, okay, sweet. So I was saying, like, last time you came on the show, we're talking about, we aim was to talk about movement and mechanics and how you've improved your function, and we end up talking about resilience and mindset and your journey. So this is round two, giving it a go of giving this value to people who want to learn from your experiences. And you mentioned off air, you want to be you're 5 months on your left, right? Yeah. And you want to be the osteo who's jacked and can run and can mobile and can work with bodybuilders. So tell us a little bit about your journey from someone who was a personal trainer, a bit broken, to now being almost a fully fledged osteo who can do all the sprints.
Tell us about the story. So, yeah, I was 110 kilos, bodybuilder, and I was probably walking around at the time around 92 kilos with like veins in my abs, living my best life, feeling like a monster, training like a monster. I felt fantastic. And then overnight just felt horrendous. And that came through, got some very bad news, some shit happened in life. And through the stress that put upon me, my body just turned to shit the next day. So I went from feeling like Superman, looking like Superman, just feeling like great, to just being in agony all the time. So being a bodybuilder, you learn how to just tense every muscle in the body, how to feel everything, just so specific while doing each exercise, putting ourselves in positions and just feeling everything, mind-body connection. And I had that really well. And then all of a sudden I was training and I'll do chest, and my neck would be killing the next day. My anterior part of my neck, or my neck would be cracking. I'd have headaches. My mid back would be killing. I'll do squats and it'll just be my knees. I'll just be doing back. It'll be just, I couldn't feel my lat. It was just everything. It was just, I couldn't feel anything anymore. It just all went to shit. Even to a point when I was walking around and I was getting cramp in my back just from walking. And I was like, it's like lower mid back. We'll talk about that later. And I literally got to a point I just couldn't do shit. Even walking around was starting to be painful and agonizing. I couldn't lift my shoulder above my head. Everything just went to shit. So then when I started seeing therapists, like talking to people who are the best in their field, Just still pretty old school mentality and way of thinking and that. And I just wasn't feeling better and I wasn't understanding what they were saying. As in, when I say not understanding what they were saying, to me, it wasn't making sense. It just didn't make sense to my situation, to my pain and what they were telling me to do. I was like thinking, you're just giving this to everyone. This is like the same old shit. So I then thought, fuck it, I want to look into this myself. I need to find my own path. So I then started doing like NKT, ART, other kind of courses, just to try and see what was going on. But then even I didn't feel that. Like, when you're getting taught, I know I'm getting some hate for stuff like saying stuff like this, but when you're getting taught therapy, whatever, and they're giving me advice on how to train, and there's some kind of like overweight, unfit person saying, oh, you shouldn't shoulder press, shouldn't do this, just in like they're muscle testing me saying, oh, your delt not working. It's like, what the fuck? No, it didn't sit right with me. And then it just got a point when I just kept looking into things, studying, going, there's got to be something else. And that's when I kind of across the PRI stuff, like basically breathing. I don't want to say PRI. It was PRI what kind of led me down the path of that breathing stuff. Like when I say breathing, diaphragm and shit like that. And then that led me to look into other things and go down that kind of path and look into what's going on. But also then I was looking into like the stress management side of things, because obviously not all these courses weren't useless. They were useless to me as one way, but I was actually picking little things up as we went. So like one thing in NKT, like I do think muscle testing is a bit of waste of time. But because what I learned, the way that I always like to look at things is this. I don't always like to look at something and go, right, what's all the positives? I try and work out what the negatives are and what the weaknesses in the methods, let's say. So then, because you got to be able to argue shit when you're learning stuff. You got to be like, right, you can't just go into something and go, wow, this is amazing, like everyone fucking does. It's like, okay, so it does that, but what are the downsides to this? What are the negatives? What are the bad sides? And say something muscle testing, like everyone can do this. Everyone can do this. Everyone, later on when you're with someone, just ask them to put their arm out in front. And you can literally just ask them to push down the arm. You can say to them, right, I want you to think about something really happy, really good time in your life. Push down my arm, it'll be fucking stronger. You ask them to stay there for 10 seconds and think of a really sad time in their life. And you push in their arm, it'll be weaker. It'll literally just fall down. Now, it ain't no magic trick. It's just the way our body reacts to the way that we're feeling and our nervous system. So just even that, it was quite funny because even they were trying to show you in NKT how your brain can do it and how it has an effect on our nervous system. But at the same time, it just showed me how their whole entire system's flawed. Everyone else went, oh my God, it's amazing. In my head, I went, okay, I've just paid fucking money just to learn this is a whole pile of shit. Because if someone comes into you one day, has bad news, the whole body's going to be weak as fuck. Now, it's just, and that's kind of like, to me, there was a massive hole in it straight away. But with that led me down the path of, okay, so I've got to look deeper into how stress affected my body. How is stress affecting the way I move? How is stress affecting all this? So that kind of started late, and then that got me studying more, looking at my own path. And then one day I was treating someone and they were doing an osteopathy course. I just went, oh, what are you doing lately? I was like, oh, I'm studying osteopathy. I was like, oh, really? Like, what? I thought you were working. I'm like, oh, no, I'm doing it part-time. This was on Thursday. And no, sorry, on the Friday about 6 o'clock in the evening. And I was like, okay. And then they told me where it was. I was like, so I was like, okay, in Bermondsey. I was like, okay, sweet. I went home, said to Sarah, I literally Googled it on the train on the way home. I said to Sarah, I'm going to apply for it. This was like in about, I don't know, June, July. And if anyone knows me, if I say I'm going to do something, I will do it. And if I decide it's not like 6 months later, it's like the next day, And I applied for the course on the Sunday. They got back to me pretty much straight away, and I had an interview on the Wednesday or Thursday. They accepted me on the Friday, and then I was basically, I was starting in 4 weeks later. So I went from only learning they started doing it, like literally, and starting the course within 5 weeks. So that was about 50 grand, that was five
I
years
worry about
later.
my impulse control.
Exactly. That's basically about 50 grand, and 5 years later, the very expensive decision I made with no. It's like I was like, right, I'm doing this. So yeah, and then
I
that's
sometimes
it.
worry. I sometimes worry about my impulse control with ADHD, but I've never put 50 grand down impulsively. So you've made me feel
Well,
much better about any
that,
impulse purchase I've ever had.
obviously that 50 grand wasn't up front, but it was still, yeah, it was something which I just thought, you know what, I don't like the way. My thing is, I don't like the way anyone who trains bodybuilding or even just CrossFit or anything, just actually anyone who actually really does care about their training, I don't think they get looked after properly, because I don't want to sound like a bit of a douche, but to be honest, for facts, 90% of chiros, osteos, therapy, masseuses, physios, whatever, don't even fucking train. And they're the ones what are giving you advice and telling you what to do in the gym. And it's like, well, no, I don't want it. Like, they don't know the mentality. Like, for them to have someone who's like, do you know what? Yeah, I don't give a shit what it does to my body. I want that squat. My knee hurts, but I don't care. I'll get a knee replacement. They don't get that mentality. You know, the people are going to do whatever they're going to do. So it's not a case of saying to them, don't fucking squat. It's like it's having the knowledge to know how to treat them, but also how to keep them moving. So having the knowledge that I have about mechanics and exercise, being able to continue pushing people's boundaries while fixing them at the same time, and having the knowledge of the training and the body osteopathy and everything else to be able to guide them to still achieve really cool shit without fucking themselves up too much. Because that's the thing. Let's face facts. Whatever, we're all fucking ourselves up. This is the thing which I'm a big believer in. Is there's two ways to fuck your body. There's doing nothing and being fucking awesome at something. If you want to be mediocre, yeah, you can go to the gym, you can exercise, and I mean exercise, not train, and you could feel fit and healthy and feel good. Cool, I'm all good. But if you are trying to be fucking awesome, if you're trying to be bigger, to be lean, to look great, to be fucking strong, to be super fit and healthy, if you want to do marathons, if you want to play rugby, these things are not what the body's supposed to do. You're going to have aches and pains. You're going to have injuries. You're going to have niggles. So this is why when I first went into this, it was all like, oh yeah, bulletproof. And I've come to hate that. I hate that now. And I will never say that, because it's not about making people bulletproof. It's about making people robust. Like all of my rebels, I am pushing them hard. And if they get a niggle or an injury, I'm like, okay, first of all, how much is it? If it's a 3 out of 10, fuck it, carry on. If it does create, if it goes more to if it's an injury, like they pull something, do you know what? I guarantee they will be healed within a couple of weeks and they'll be back to doing their shit. Because when I talk about robust, it means I've got them really fit and healthy to a point where their body heals itself very quickly. And that's the thing about being fit and healthy and conditioned. It means that we heal quickly. You know, the nutrition's on point, the sleep's on point, the training is on point. So the point is, when they do get injured, it doesn't completely fuck us. Where if you haven't got the health and fitness in place, it means an injury can last a lot longer than it should do. And that's what I'm about.
Yeah, this is this thing I worry about as well. I completely agree with your sentiment of like how many physios, osteos, etc. don't train themselves. They wrap people in cotton wool. You know, they don't do this, don't go in the gym, don't deadlift. And you kind of get to this point where people end up in more pain or reliant on their chiropractor
Yeah.
to get them out of pain every time they train. And I think it's the same thing sometimes with coaches now with the misinterpretation of exercise mechanics. Now, all the stuff they're learning is sound, but we've got a lot of people now trying to be physios when they're trainers and are now going, well, you can't get above here, never train within this range ever again. And I'm a prime example of someone who got worse and in more pain by taking that advice. And I remember very vividly a mentorship with you many years ago where you talked about SI joint pain. And I thought it was a breath of fresh air. I was like, do sumo, because that position will put them in a position where they're less likely to have pain and they can still lift heavy, you know, depending on how bad the injury is, of course, and still train around the injury. And I thought that was such a, shouldn't be, but a different take on like, look, we're going to allow you to train hard. And if we do add any rehab, prehab stuff, it's in the right place for the scope of practice we have. It's at the back end of the workout. You've done your heavy stuff and we'll just modify your heavy stuff to make it work for you.
And that's the thing which I'm seeing a lot of is the whole range of motion thing and don't do this and don't do that. The problem is you've got to know when to use whatever test you're using. So if you're, you know, you got to know the difference between active range of motion and passive range of motion for a start. So if someone's got an injury, we have to make sure, like people say, don't go above your head. It's like, well, okay, so actively I can get to here, but if I can get your shoulder up to here on a table when your nervous system's not fighting me and I've relaxed you, but I know that's something it's not something structural, it's not something which we have to worry about, and it's something else at play. But then also it's the training the body will only, it's like we know that the body responds to the forces are placed upon it, so it adapts. So if you start only training in certain ranges of motion, the body will adapt to that and it will only allow you to go into those positions. And so what happens is, and we've all done it, is I see it all the time. Now people are starting to use blocks and everything to start their pressing and everything to make sure the machines and that. The problem is, as you put more and more weight on, you are slightly decreasing your range of motion. And over time, say that you're putting the weight and you're going for the progressive overloads, and over time you do end up losing like an inch. And you start, you know, having people lift it off, and you start having people putting blocks behind it so you can start in a different position. You're just now creating a smaller and smaller range of motion, when what we need to be doing is making sure that as we are progressing that weight, that range of motion is not decreasing. And we're not letting that happen. And now that's one thing. The other side of it, as I said to you, is that table testing to see what the passive range of motion is. But also you have to also remember when it comes into our brain as well, when it comes to pain. And you have to sometimes decipher, is the pain an old injury? Is the pain something to do with your mindset? Is the pain like protective mechanism? Because pain doesn't always mean structural issues. People think it does. People go, oh, there's pain, therefore I have an issue. Pain is like an alarm bell. It's letting us know there could be an issue in the future. Unless we fall over, unless we do actually slice our finger off, you know, accidentally stab ourselves with a knife while cooking, then that's pain. That's obvious. We've done a damage. But pain also can be like, whoa, you know, there's something gonna happen, so we stop you. That's basically what pain is. Now, if you've been injured before, or an exercise that you've done before, or a movement which has injured you, what can happen now is that the brain has now it's now adapted this alarm system to be really fucking sensitive for this position. So like if you've hurt yourself deadlifting, and in the past at 160 kilos, what will happen? First of all, you'll go back to deadlifting. 100 will kind of feel a bit funny. You might get little tweaks. You'll be like, oh, I don't know. Because you'll be setting alarm bells saying, we've been here before, don't hurt it. And then as you put the weight back up, you might be better over time, but you get near that weight of what hurt you, then all of a sudden that alarm bell will go firing. Now, that pain hasn't come from an actual injury. It's just come from your brain remembering what the fuck hurt you last time. And it's an alarm bell to say, don't you fucking do this. So when you have pain, this is the thing you've got to decipher. As I said to you, is it an actual injury? Is it tissue? Is it structural? Is it passive? Is it active? Or can it be your brain just protecting you? And this is the parts of the puzzle we have to see. Is it, and then that comes down to stress as well upon the system, because the more stressed your body is, the more heightened your alarm system is. So could your pain just be a memory from a memory from an old injury plus your stress that you haven't slept? Do you know what I mean? So it's putting all of this piece of the puzzle together to then decipher what I'm going to do with that person.
Do you think that's what happened to you? Like going into the hardcore bodybuilding days, training with less and less range of motion to keep tension on the muscle, and that's why you were fine until you had a stressful incident in your life, and all of a sudden your alarm sense was already heightened, and now you weren't as resilient or robust as you were before?
Not at all. I didn't have bad range of motion really. My range of motion only was shit when I was like 110 and bloated and fat. But that's just because I was just too big. My joint, there's too much muscle around, muscle, fat, water, whatever you want to call it. Just basically,
all the above.
There's basically too much, like trying to flex and get down onto my shoelaces up. There's just too much shit in the way of joints. So my range of motion, because don't forget, that's another thing. Is your range of motion gone now? Because say you've got huge hamstrings, well, obviously you can't flex your leg as much. People don't forget about this. Yeah. Big people are less flexible also because they've got a lot of mass in the way of joints now. So don't forget that point of it. But no, what happened with me was I was obviously working long hours. I was studying a lot because I just always studied a lot, because being where we worked beforehand, we just always wanted to be the best. It pushed us, and that's the great thing about that place. I was training shitloads, and I was putting a lot of stress on my body as it was. And then you can add the fucking drugs I was taking as well, which was just more stress on my body, as in steroids and that, not recreational stuff. And I've got a lot of stress on my body now. So when you then add a massive amount of stress, which I went through overnight, which just knocked us for 6, it's just changed the way it put me in such a I was already sympathetic, really, like walking around in really sympathetic dominance, really. Then I just basically, it just jacked me up so much to my sympathetic nervous system to such a protective place. So my breathing went to shit. The way that I breathed, it just put me in such a bad position. That's why I was getting, the reason I was getting cramps in my mid-low back, it was around my serratus anterior. It was basically around where I was hinging. So my breathing, I wasn't breathing diaphragmatic. I probably wasn't breathing diaphragmatic to begin with in the first place that well. And then when I added this in, what I was doing, I was using my back musculature to try and increase volume in my thoracic cavity. So literally my back was just spasming from trying to breathe because it was trying to do the fucking work. Yeah. All my accessory muscles, my neck and all that kind of stuff was overworking. So when I tried to bench in that, I just had loads of tension in my jaw and my neck so when I went to bench or do things like that, all the tension was going through into my back where I was trying to breathe and stabilize. It was going into my neck where I was trying to breathe and stabilize. So that was from a diaphragmatic breathing point of view, breathing mechanic point of view, but also in that position, when you go into the position of the thorax and the position of what goes on with your scapular health and your humeral health and your shoulder health, then you can understand that if I was in such an expanded, externally rotated position within my thorax, that was then going to limit the range of motion which I had in my scapula and was compressing my rhomboids. And then that was going to basically cause issues with my shoulders, because if my rhomboids and my scapula were, and I was always compressed in the back of my thorax and I was expanded in the front, that means I wasn't going to have good scapulothoracic humeral rhythm, which meant I wasn't going to be able to put my arm above my head, which then meant the traps will come into play to try and lift shit up. But also when I started uni and they were all doing like tests on my shoulders, it was like I had every single positive test for a labral tear. I couldn't even put my arm on my shoulder like this. Um, that really hurt. And if someone put any bit of pain on, oh my God, it was agony. But that could be like, to be honest with you, I probably have got a labral tear in there, but we can go into that later about how that fucking doesn't matter sometimes. And, but it was all this positioning, all my poor diaphragm control, let's say, and which put me in such a bad negative position that I wasn't able to put muscles in the best place to feel them. My body was so jacked up and protective, it just wasn't allowing me to do shit. And that's what happened. It wasn't, to be honest with you, anything to do with my range of motion or anything at that point. It was to do with just how getting some bad news and putting my body in such a state of stress. And that's what really led me down the road and really put me into how the body works and how stress affects pain and chronic pain. And that's what's put me down this road lately of really delving into chronic pain and shit.
Interesting. You mentioned earlier on about like your breathing mechanics from this stressful incident, but it might have even been before. And that's something that really resonates with me, just because I've been focusing on this stuff for a little while, ever since working with you, but I've really put it into practice over the last few weeks. And I was like, why is it that, my knowledge is all right, it could always be more, but I'm like, why am I so stiff despite being the person, like, compared to most of my colleagues, knows more about this stuff? And I started doing this breathwork stuff, and I was like, I remember having asthma as a kid. I've had dental issues all my life, which is a big sign of a mouth breather. I was the kid in school that couldn't blow up a balloon. I was the only one that couldn't do it. And I'm realizing how many layers of compensation, probably for like 25, 26 years, that I have been building up over time to this position where I am now, where, similar to yourself, everything was just holding on for dear life. For someone who's listening to this, who maybe that went completely over their head, right? They've only learnt moment arms, joint angles, and daisy chains. When it comes to actual position, how does position of like the rib cage and pelvis, in the simplistic way, because if they want the detail way, go and sign up to your course, which is excellent. How does that affect somebody's ability to move?
People are studying, which is great, what all this kind of use of the moment arms and that. Everyone's studying this stuff, which is fantastic, and is great to know. But this is all external. And we have an internal machine. We have internal moment arms. We have internal ranges of motion. We have internal, profiles. And we have to think it's not just about putting ourselves in external positions to fit external machines. We have to put our skeleton is like our fulcrum. It's what's pulling us. It's what's giving us a fixed position for our muscles to pull upon. And that's part of the reason why people can't move these days, and mobility and that it is because they're on machines using too much external equipment rather than thinking about the internal equipment. And there's obviously difference, and I'm not saying don't use either. I'm just saying you have to know what you're doing to achieve whatever you're trying to do and the downfalls of everything. But anyway, so the position that you put your skeleton in is obviously going to dictate how the muscles work and how other joints work. So if your diaphragm is contracted, it's going to basically expand your rib cage. And if you expand your rib cage, it's going to actually pull back and pull down your rhomboids. And now when you lift your arm above your head, you want these things to move and fly, which actually means we want a more anterior depression of the rib cage to allow that scapula to actually move around it. And it's things like that which heavily affect the way the body moves. And do you know what? I don't know if I'm going with this. What was the question again?
How does the position of like rib cage and pelvis affect someone's ability to move? So you're in that like that. Yeah.
So that's going to limit someone's range of motion at the shoulder. So pushing overhead and that, that's why I'm saying table tests are nice, because I want to see what's stopping that range of motion. Because if they're on the table, now we've kind of taken away the internal and gravity. what's going on in the nervous system. But then on the table, I can even say to them, right, I'll put them in the position I want to be in. So I might say to breathe out or something. And all of a sudden they can raise their arm above their head because their rib cage is now in a better position or something like that. So just knowing where to test and what to do. So doing that kind of stuff does really give me a good idea of what's going on. And that's how, and if the rib cage is flared, your pelvis will be anterior rotated as well. So people are doing lots of stuff to kind of pull back, like posteriorly tilt their pelvis, like doing, oh, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. But actually, if we don't sort the rib cage out, the pelvis won't be sorted out either. So there's lots of these things, what's going to dictate. And if your pelvis is anterior rotated, you're going to have less flexion. You're going to have issues there as well, femoral impingement. So a lot of issues, what people complain about, labral tears, impingement syndromes in your shoulders and your hips, a lot of the time that just comes from the skeleton not being in a good position or optimal position, let's say, to be able to move through those ranges of motion.
If the body is fighting to keep balance in those positions, like if you're in an anterior tilted pelvis position forward to stop you falling on your face, you're now going to be in this ribcage flared position. Is this why you find that certain things end up being working extra hard to try and fight against each other almost?
And not fighting against each other. What you got to think of, your body's going to do whatever it has to do to stay upright and to put forces throughout the body. So
to breathe, I presume.
The most things that we have to do, first of all, we have to breathe. That's the most important, vital thing to us. So we will put ourselves in whatever position we have to be able to breathe. If that is a flared rib cage, extended thoracics, forward head posture, whatever, then that's cool. If it's going to throw our hips forward to more of a sway back posture to deal with that, if it's going to, and these things are going to have a knock-on effect over the body, and that's breathing. And then you're going to have the forward head posture, because for one, that's going to open up the airways, but also it's going to allow you to eat and to keep vision, because the next thing for survival, we have to be able to eat. So to be able to eat, we've got to keep our jaw in line and everything, and we've got to be able to see, because if we're looking down at the floor or up at the sky, we can't see shit and we can't be safe. So our body's always looking at protecting us, but to keep us alive. So the first thing though is breathing, and that's why I see it as one of the first things that I want to look at. Like, yeah, I don't go into it as far as some people, but I do it as far as I need to get to what I want someone to be, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I don't even call it breathing drills, I call it positional drills, because it's not really breathing. I'm strengthening a muscle normally, or I'm strengthening, or I'm toning down a muscle, like basically the diaphragm. So I'm working a muscle, and I work that muscle through breathing. And then once I can sort that, whatever's doing there out, because you got breathing for the psychological and for the mechanical side of it. So you just got to know what part you're doing, because it'll work as two different things. But your body's just trying to keep you alive. That's all posture is. It's putting you in the best position, the position it can best breathe, the position, and that's why your mental state will also affect that. And
is that the difference between psychological and like the physical breathing you were saying? Is like one is going to be more the physical side of it is going to be more like rib cage down, for like elongate the exhale, this sort of stuff, as opposed to the mental side of it is like anything that calms the nervous system down, your restorative yoga, your whatever you need to do just to chill out.
Exactly, because if my positioning drills, which is what people are breathing drills, or I call positioning drills, because if you do them the way that I want you to do them, you're more than likely going to excite the nervous system, because we're just strengthening muscles. Because the breathing drill before, or positioning drills, really all this PRI stuff and all this kind of stuff, all they're really doing, you're basically strengthening the external obliques, and trying to chill out the diaphragm on one side while strengthening it on the other side. Because it's the obliques that are having the main effect on the pelvis and the rib cage. So basically it's more strengthening work I'm doing. So it is exciting the nervous system. Whereas if you're doing a breathing drill for the mental side of it, then that's when it's completely different. That's that's a completely different ball game. So knowing what you want to achieve means what you're going to advise, and that's the importance of knowing what you're trying to do.
How do you assess that? Someone comes into your practice, gets in the amazingly good garage gym that is the Fitness Rebels gym, gets on the bed, and how are you assessing their ability to breathe? Are you looking at timing and exhale? Are you looking at range of motion test? Are you looking at ISI? Like what do you look at?
I've been doing it enough now. I just look at them because you can see where they're breathing into. You can see where they're not breathing into. I can see if their ribs are moving. I'll place my hands on their ribs quickly. I can feel it. I can see it. Also, though, as I said, part of it is listening to them as well, because you'll know someone. You need to be able to listen to the way they talk, the language they use. This is a big thing. Like if they're catastrophizing their injuries, like, oh my God, yeah, I can't do this, I can't do that. I can't go to work, I can't. I'm like, you walked in here, you bent over, you sat down, it ain't that fucking bad. But in their head, their life's over. So I know straight away what kind of, that they're catastrophizing it. They might not be a negative person, but at this point in their life, they're quite negative. But they're very negative around the situation. So straight away, I know they're in a stressed position, they're in a stressed state, which won't be helping me in my treatment, or it won't be helping them recover from their injury. So it's what I mean. When it comes to the breathing side and the postural side, too many people are focused on the mechanical side of it, where most of the time it's going to be the mental state driving it. Like I said, the diaphragm and all that kind of stuff, yeah, it's going to be affected mechanically, but really it's our nervous system, it's our emotions, which to me is driving how we're holding ourselves. You will get, like I'll say it quite a lot, is you won't see many people who are very happy in life with not much stress, with chronic pain.
Yeah.
Or pain.
Yeah.
The people who are more in pain are the ones going through shit. It's a very, and that's the thing. And it's a lot's got to do with your mental state. And if you can, because also a little bit of physiology is that when you're highly stressed, you're going to be in that sympathetic tone, and that's going to hold your muscles tight, which is going to restrict blood flow. Restriction of blood flow is going to have a buildup of metabolites. Those metabolites are going to basically increase something called the pressor reflex, which then makes you hold yourself even tighter. So you're just basically having this lack of blood flow. You're going to increase blood pressure, increase heart rate to try and get blood flow going. But because you're so holding yourself so tight, you're decreasing that blood flow, that muscle becoming ischemic. Now, also at the same time as that, lactic acid can actually cause pain with our nociceptin, our pain cells, pain receptors. So you can be in it, when people get this really aching muscles, they're really kind of like, oh, it's just really aching all the time. Yeah. And it's just really tight. That's because it's lack of blood flow going through that tissue. You've got build up of metabolites. It's causing you that kind of stiff, achy pain. And that, again, turns on the sympathetic nervous system. So we have this kind of like circle of going round and round.
Feedback loop.
And then you're going to have that's going to cause movement patterns to change and dysfunctional movement patterns or whatever, and then could cause injuries, whatever. But anyway, so you got that going on as well. So as soon as you get stressed, you're going to hold yourself tight, because first of all, your sympathetic nervous system is in the protective, it's ready to go. So it's going to be very tight. That's going to cause lack of blood flow going through muscles, which is going to cause a decrease of range of motion as well. And then that's going to cause you to have a less of a mood, get more negative, more sympathetic. So as I said to you, it's this constant thing. So you'll find people who have got chronic pain are going to be in this kind of loop. So you have to try and find, as a trainer, because we're not therapists, this is what I always say, is that what you do outside the gym dictates to what I do inside the gym with you. So I need to now, my goal as a trainer should be, how can I push you and get your goals while not pushing, while not filling your cup up so much, it's going to spill out even more. I need to pour some water out that cup. And this is when smashing the fuck out of people like straight away isn't always going to be this is where like Luke's that trademark the least mode thing, which again people kind of take wrong what it actually means. But it's, you know, you could smash them up for 20 minutes and the rest of the session is quite cardio based, getting blood flow pumping, so you're increasing the aerobic base. But we've got the strength part at the beginning, and then we decrease or do some breathing drills, some yoga at the end or something. Or you smash them up 2, 3 times a week because they're in that kind of like mindset. It's their therapy. Let's not take away the, because like I said, even though it's filling the cup up, we've got the mindset of it's their therapy, let's call it, 2, 3 hours a week when it's their time away from the kids, away from what work, away from whatever's causing them hell, and it's their way of getting that the anger out, you know, talking from experience. But maybe for the other 5 sessions a week is all cardio. So we can actually help the aerobic system, which helps our anxiety and our stress. So again, knowing where your patient, your client is mentally gives you a massive chance to actually help them even more. And that's what I think so many people are missing. This is what, you know, to me, I actually think personal trainers have way more chance of healing people and fixing people if they know what they're doing than any therapist. Because people will see a therapist once a week, once every 2 weeks, maybe once a month, if financial or whatever. But they don't really take, you know, nutrition advice off them. They just want to be, you know, where as a trainer, you have they're giving you the whole body. They're giving you responsibility and they're trusting you with their whole, they will do anything you say. Clients will stand there, you know, do handstands, drinking water upside down when blowing a balloon up or whatever. Fucking, if you tell them to, they'll do, people will do crazy shit, whatever the trainer says. So, yeah. And people take that responsibility way too lightly. And that's the shit part of our industry. But anyway, if you are a trainer who cares, stress management and knowing how to balance that will do way more for injuries and recovery than so many things. Yeah. That makes sense.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, 100%. And I want to come back to one of the things you said earlier on in this about like how you were almost assessing where somebody is in terms of stress. And they might not be a negative person, but you're seeing it in the same way that our body is trying to protect us in a positional standpoint. Our perception of stress is a protective mechanism as well. We all have seen that person who will tell you they're not stressed, but they're jittering around like, I'm not stressed. I've never been stressed in my life. I'm really chilled. And you can just see it. So like, for people like that, like how does a trainer get across the importance of recovery? Because as you said, some people are coming into the gym for that beast mode experience, and you suggesting yoga or aerobics or meditation is just a bit woo for these people. How do you get that point across that this is actually going to help your hard training?
Literally what you just said. To say you do this, you can train harder. If you do that, we can push you harder. So to say we're not going to train hard straight away, they'll turn off and then won't want to leave you straight away. So, but if you say, look, if you can do X, Y, Z, if you do this for me, it means when we're in here, it's going to be a PB. We can push you harder. So with that kind of like, you know, donkey and carrot kind of thing, it's just like saying, it's like hanging a carrot in front of them. If you do your cardio, we can go, I'll do a DC set drop and fucking drop sets and shit. But if you don't, we can't, because your aerobic system isn't going to be very good. You're going to get to fucking 8 reps. Lactic acid is going to build up and you're going to feel like shit. Where if you do your cardio, it means we can do the same weight for 20 reps. And then that means we've got bigger gains. Boom, done. They're going to be like, oh shit. So if I do my cardio, I can do more reps, lift up, have less rest, get more weights in the session. This is what people don't realize. The fitter you are, the more you can do in your session. You don't have to have a 3-minute rest. You can now have a 2-minute rest, do the same weight you did, but now we can add some arms at the end of the session, because instead of spending fucking 30 minutes to get through a couple of sets of bench press because you've got such shit aerobic capacity, you need that rest period to recover, to be able to pick up a decent weight to elicit hypertrophy. Now we can actually have the rest period of 45 seconds instead of having 3 minutes of the same fucking weight, more density in the session, more weight lifted, more tonnage across the week, more hypertrophy. And that's the kind of way you have to set it out on these people of saying, well, if you want, we can do more, lift more weight, recover quicker. You can train more often if you sort out your stress.
Going back to your positional work, well, I think because the breath work and positional training and stuff has become a little bit of the buzzword now in the last 2-3 years of the industry, right? I always say with mechanics, you've got the people in the middle that kind of have a good understanding of what it is, and then you have the muscle mechanics crowd, which are the moment arms, daisy chains, reverse banding, and then you have the movement mechanics crowd, which are all anterior pelvic tilt and flared rib cage and all sort of things. Whereas that person in the middle knows that ability of like, look, there are bone spurs, there are things we can't change, but if you're in a really terrible position, we can pull it back. But the problem I find when people have gone down this breathwork routine is that a lot of people they'll get people doing this breathwork drill, and nothing ever changes. It's that person that ends up doing a 40-minute warm-up every time before they need to squat for the next 5 years. How does someone go about progressing breathwork so that it sticks? Because you do so many reps of breathing in a day, the chance of you like outnumbering your bad reps is almost going to be borderline impossible if you're a mouth breather. So how do you make this stuff stick for somebody so they get long-lasting change?
Okay, so one thing, stress, like I said, you see yourself, your stress, which includes aerobic fitness, you sort those two things out, or at least help those, increase the aerobic fitness and decrease stress somehow. And when I say decrease stress, if someone's works 50 hours a week and has 2 kids and is married, yeah, that's, and doesn't sleep much. But then we've got to be like, okay, so can we sort the sleep out? Can we sort out, we're not going to diet you down to fucking a 6-pack because that's going to take the stress too much. So looking at that stress, trying to find something in their life to de-stress them. That, for one, like I just said, your psychological state will dictate how you're breathing. So sorting something out there might be, for some people, journaling, meditating, I don't know. Everyone's got their own fucking thing. And the one thing, actually, I tell you what, if anyone takes anything from this fucking podcast, it's this. Don't just do shit because everyone else fucking says it. Journaling, yes. Do you know what? I ain't gonna fucking journal. My wife ain't gonna fucking journal. No matter how fucking hard shit gets, I have never journaled. Other shit gets me through. And I'll have my own ways of dealing with stuff. And just because everyone else does it, everyone tells you to do it, or they tell you to buy their journal, they're making money off you, don't forget, making you think you have to do it. But not everything works for everyone. Ice baths. Not everyone has to have a fucking ice bath in the morning to jump out and kill the day. Whatever. It could just be anything. You've got to find what works for you to de-stress.
Here's a question for you on that topic. It's slightly off on a tangent, but I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Like, where obviously, I remember when I met you, with the clients that we used to get, it was like steak and nuts for breakfast. You train them really fucking hard and they end up just getting results. It was the days before My Fitness Pal, right? You give them something, you ask them to run into a wall, they ask you, how many times, sir? And now, do you think we've got to a point that people are, and we're going to upset some people here, getting softer to the extent where we're looking for discomfort? We're looking for ice baths. We're looking for things that are uncomfortable because our lives have become so comfortable.
Okay. No. I don't. Okay. I don't think that, because I don't think our lives are that comfortable. Like, for fuck me, you're talking. We had COVID for 2 years. We've now, like, if you live in UK at the moment, like, I don't even want to look at at the moment, it's -6. I've got a heating on in a big house. I don't even want to know what my gas bill is going to be, my electric bill is going to be in fucking next month.
Yeah.
Cost of living is more expensive than it ever has been. You've got wars going on. You've got, and if you take notice of all that, yeah, it is stressful. We've got, I run my own business. My wife's the CEO of a big business. It's not that comfortable. You still have to work. We're still running around. We still got stress. I'm studying uni while running my own business. And that's the thing, like, I think people are looking for some way of coping and helping. And like I said, at the moment, I'm uncomfortable every single day. I'm at uni learning things, going outside my box, talking to other osteopaths, learning different techniques, learning different things, being pushed out of my box every fucking day. I come home listening to my wife talk about what kind of crazy shit she's doing. I'm surrounded by people. I'm like, fuck, I'm trying to run a business while at uni. Honestly, I don't want to have more discomfort. I'm happy at the moment. I think people are like, oh yeah, challenging yourself. Do you know what? I am fucking challenging myself, trying to fucking earn a living while being at uni. That to me, and having a wife, having a healthy relationship, all that is challenging. So at this precise
Do you
moment,
think some of these?
I'm just I see that as a challenge, and I see that as my mindset. Like, what? Don't get me wrong. Once my uni's over and I'm training a couple of times a day and I'm doing stuff, I want to start trying ice baths and experimenting with that for mental toughness. But at this precise moment, my mental toughness is running a business while studying an osteopathy degree, while having a healthy relationship, and while going through bad times, government-wise, and health crises and all that kind of shit. It's like people are trying. They don't think people are realizing how hard their life is, and they're trying to find. I don't know. It's weird because I'm just like, your life's tough already, but these things are supposed to help. But I just find people like to be part of groups. People like to be part of something, and it's like I don't know. It's like they just want to be part of this movement as such. But don't get me wrong, I want to start doing it at some point. It's just at the moment, I just don't think it's. I just don't want to add more. I think, yeah, I've got enough.
Yeah. You were just coming on to what I was going to say. Like, do you think sometimes these things have the opposite effect of when they were intended? The one that always makes me shudder is when people talk morning routines, right? I get up at 4 o'clock and I meditate for an hour and a half, and then I make a 4-egg breakfast, and then I go and do an ice bath, and I do some acupuncture, and then I do an hour of foam rolling. I'm like, most people are just running out the door to work. And I remember this year, like, we're obviously, both friends with Luke Lehman, who talks about having a hobby. And I totally agree with Luke in the sense of having a hobby is one of the best things you can do. But earlier this year, I tried to pick up a hobby through a stressful period. And it was that one thing on the tip of the iceberg that just was a little bit too overwhelming. Yeah. And I was just going through enough that I just wanted to chill out. Do you think sometimes, like, the pressure to now, on top of the stress we've got on our lives, to journal, to meditate, to do this, you just add things onto the list?
Look, I say I'm quite controversial in this one, in the sense of I do think we've become quite soft in the sense of we think everything should be easy, and we're not. And I think emotions have been turned into a negative thing. It's like, oh, I'm sad. I feel I'm not achieving anything. Okay, that's an emotion. It doesn't mean you're depressed. It doesn't mean you've got anxiety. You don't need medication. You don't need a fucking journal. You just feel unhappy. That we all have sad thoughts. We have unhappy thoughts. We have happy thoughts. We have exciting thoughts. But it's like, unless you are happy 24/7, you have an issue. There's like, and it's like, oh yeah, stress is such a bad thing. Working all the time. It's like you just said, there are going to be times in your life you have to, like, after Christmas, my life is going to suck. I've got 5 months until uni finishes. I am just literally going to spend all my time studying and not really going out having much fun. But that's 5 months of my life. And then I'm going to have a couple of months of just having fucking fun. And it's like, well, if you want to achieve something, you've got to put the work in, and you have to embrace the suck. And like you just said, problem is then adding tracking food, dieting, ice bath, morning routines, and that stresses the fuck out of people way too much, which people are getting. Like, I got shredded on multiple occasions before any app was invented, before Instagram, before fucking phones had all fancy shit on it. I was fit and healthy. I was strong. I dieted. And I think adding, as you just said, it's so true. Like, I've seen adding steps in, people stressing they've not done their steps. Well, actually, it's going to be more derogative to you stressing and losing sleep over you've done your steps to actually fucking not doing your steps. Not sleeping that night because you didn't make your steps and apologizing. Like, amount of times, if my clients are like, oh, sorry, I had a Mars bar yesterday. Okay, I just cut 200 calories today. Fuck it. Chill, relax. Unless you're getting on stage, that's completely less. Unless you've got a date for something, but just generally without that certain date, you got to be, the stress will affect you way worse than most of the shit you're not doing, or you fucked up or something. And stressing that you didn't get up an hour beforehand to do your whole morning routine, it's like, no, that's just you're just putting, everyone's putting more and more stress on it. And I also think people are becoming too reliant on apps to for everything, as in having a sleep app to tell you how you slept. Okay, you wake up, you feel good, crack on. You wake up, you feel shit, you slept bad. Do I need to spend £400 in the ring to tell me I slept bad? I know it. I just woke up. I feel like shit. And it's
HRV. It's HRV that does that with me. It's where and I don't wrong, very valuable metric if you know how to use it and know how to interpret it. But when people go, HRV's gone down, maybe I shouldn't train hard. Like, how do you feel? Great. All right, plow on then.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Like, you got to. That's another thing. We won't talk about HRV and that, but it is a thing of, instead of feeling their body, learning the signs. Like, I know signs that, like, I've got probably osteoarthritis pretty much definitely in this knuckle, or maybe RA, but probably osteoarthritis. And I know when I eat stuff which doesn't agree with me, like it's more inflammatory for me, that will ache. That actually throbs.
Interesting.
And that will throb. So I'm like, no, I should not eat certain foods. Or if I'm very highly stressed, that will kind of start to throb. So I know that about my body. I know that if I have an ulcer on my tongue, that's me on the verge of really getting ill.
Same. Yeah.
But it's knowing this. It's knowing the science. But people are too busy looking at using apps and using everything else. And it's like, feel your body, feel the signs. The old injury starting to come back in. Is it this or is it that? What food should you be eating? It's just all these crazy things that I feel that we need to be able to learn how to feel within ourselves rather than rely on apps to tell us. And that adds more stress.
To play devil's advocate. Yeah. To play devil's advocate, because I agree with you 100%. But to play devil's advocate, looking back of, even over the last 15 years, how food has changed, how easy calories are, how accessible things are for people. Is the need for an app like a food tracking app now more applicable for people that have maybe grown up in this world where there are more hidden calories than ever? It's easier to make mistakes than ever before. Like, even 10 years ago, quite easy. It still is, really, if you're home cooking your own food. But for people that maybe don't, is there maybe an argument why these things have become more popular?
It's easy. Simple as that. It's just people just want, and also people want to take away any responsibility. It's like, oh, the app will tell me. It's easier for something else to tell them what to do. The whole world at the moment just wants to be told how to feel, how to look, how to eat. Everything's just all about being told what to fucking do. People are becoming quite sheepish like that. And I don't know, I think apps are great to learn. Like, don't get me wrong, they are great to learn. But once you've learned, I don't see going out to eat. Once you've learned how to eat, I don't see an issue with it. Like, you go out, you have a steak and sweet potato, or you go out and have rice, and you kind of roughly know. And hidden calories, okay, you might have a few hidden calories, but let's face it, it's not the hidden calories that are making you fat. It's the fact you had 3 burgers. It's not the hidden fucking calories in the burgers. You know what I mean? It's you're overeating. And that's the thing as well. People know they're overeating.
Do you think personal trainers, I'm not saying 100% success rate, but do you think personal trainers overall would have a closer to 100% success rate if everyone had to be honest? Do you think this is the problem, that people feel too much guilt to explain why they're overeating to somebody else?
Well, yeah, because that's overeating or not achieving stuff. And like I said, this whole part, it's all about the mental side of it. And that's where, as a trainer, this is where you have to be quite good with people, because you have to they have to feel comfortable to open up to you sometimes, maybe what they're doing and why they're doing it. And that's when, as a trainer, you have to be acceptable that maybe sometimes you have to refer out for them to go and see somebody. I had a couple of clients who I said, look, stop training with me, because let's find you a therapist to work with, because you're not sticking to your diet. And they've opened up to me about issues and stress and everything. And I've gone, right, this is, I can help around mindset from a point of view of managing your stress, helping you with, because I said journaling, not bad. For some people, it's fantastic. For some people, it's not. Don't get stressed. It didn't work for you. So there's something else out there for you. So try and ice baths, try and fucking journals, try and breathing techniques. Trying to sort their life out, just so it becomes less stressful, aerobic training, all this kind of stuff. You can, as a trainer, you've got a lot of tools at your disposal. But then if it's a deep rooted fucking childhood trauma, which is causing, you're not, that's something else. That's when you have to base, and it's all pretty much childhood trauma. We're all fucked up in some way, no matter how good or bad our parents are. Even if the parents have thought they were doing something good, even that shit can fuck you up. Do you know what I mean? It's a minefield. And
trauma's subjective as well, right? Because I've looked at this recently, and since I had my ADHD diagnosis, I've been studying it quite a lot. And one of the things they always say is that stress from the parents translates to stress in the child. And this is where a lot of ADHD comes from. The kid doesn't know how to fight or flight, so they freeze, and this is their go-to response. And I look back and I went, I've lucked out in the parents' department. Shout out to my mum if she listened to this. A wonderful woman. But I was like, the typical bloke response. Well, I haven't had a trauma. I haven't had any negativity, unless I've repressed it. But I haven't had all this. Why do I have this thing that's because of this? And it's our response to something. Bullying as a kid is not the worst bullying in the world, but it was some. Like not being listened to as a kid. Everyone has their shit.
Everyone's got
and
something.
For one person, it's horrendous. It's abuse. Someone could have the exact same response for something that is trivial to somebody else.
It could just be like, as I said to you, positive stuff. The parents push them to be the best. So now they just kind of like, I have this, it's never good enough kind of thing. It just be, there's so many things which can affect you. And like, if I'm being honest, I never really know, my parents never kind of said, well done. That's why throughout my life, I always wanted whoever my managers, my bosses, I always fed off them saying, well done. Because I played rugby for England. I just got, oh, your brother ran for England. I was like, what the fuck? They showed love in so many other ways. So many other ways. But when it came to saying well done, they didn't, because they didn't want to see it as favoring the other son. Kind of thing. So that really fucked me up. But then you can say it didn't fuck me up, because wanting a well done from the boss just made me do my job even harder and even better. And
if they'd done it the other way around, you might be fucked up in a different way.
Exactly.
Right? Like, there's no real winning in this game.
There isn't, and that's why it's a fucking minefield. You think you're doing one thing, you think you're doing something right, but you're not. It's a complete minefield. Nature, nurture. One son, you can have two kids brought up exactly the same way. One becomes a fucking serial murderer. The other one becomes fucking, awesome, working for a charity. You just don't know. Exactly the same. It's whatever. But anyway, that's fucking not my kind of topic to talk about. But the point is that if you do sense there's something stopping someone, not just a party boy who wants to go out, or doesn't really want it, because we all know if you want it enough, you'll do it. There can also be that there's an issue there. There's a deep down scared of success. There's scared of change. Their relationship might be over if they kind of go down this route, because they're growing apart. There's a lot of stuff going on in life. I've had relationships break down when people start to get healthy, because one's unhealthy, one's healthy, and the one is unhealthy pushes all their deep down insecurities on the one who's getting healthy. Oh, you're going to leave me, you're going to cheat. It's like, well, I love you. Like, what the fuck? But it's their insecurities of not training. I've seen that a couple of times in my past, my clients. But that's going to stop someone dieting, or not dieting, sorry, but looking after themselves, or being healthy, and pushing back into an old way of thinking. But that's not our place to fucking give advice or help. That is say, okay, do you know what? You've got to go see someone. Why don't advise? Why don't you know, marriage guidance or whatever? Obviously, don't advise that unless you're good friends with, you know, you've got a good relationship. But
I think your relationship's shit. You should go see someone.
yeah, but the thing is though, if they're telling you about it,
of course,
they know it is. So, you know, if you
Yeah.
say, look, why don't you go and do that? I can't help you much further because this is a big fucking barrier, you know. But you kind of get to, when you're good with people, you know there's something else going on. It's like, and that's when sometimes you have to say, look, you gotta go and see someone. Like if you're treating like not just out of dieting and results, but if you're a therapist and something to do with pain, if someone's in chronic pain and you try a lot of stuff, they'll probably do better of just talking to someone. Like even like you know, trainers and therapists know you can become a bit of a, you're not a therapist, but they talk to you like one. They just let it all out, but that makes people feel better. But sometimes that to me, the couple of times in the last couple of years, I've had to say to a couple of clients, look, I think come back to me afterwards, but I think you need to go and see someone. They're like, yeah, cool. Because they respect that as well. You're not just taking their money. You're not just doing, I'm like looking out for their health and their mental state and their goals, but I'm looking out for them. I'm being a human being.
Yes.
I'm not being a trainer. I'm being a human being of like, look, you won't be able to move forward in life until you sort this out. And I can't do that. You need to go and see someone. And we work together to find someone.
Yeah, I remember that's one of the things I learned from you very, very early on. Is if someone comes in and they've had a bad day and they're stressed, sometimes the best thing they can do in the first 5 minutes is just let it all out and vent. And other people just want to go straight into their deadlift, and that's the way they, you know, they have their little therapy session.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's a time to refer out, but knowing your clients and knowing what response they're going to do is so key.
It's all. This is one thing I find hilarious. I don't fucking understand it. It's called personal training, but yet people who become personal trainers aren't personal and don't like people. It's like, the fuck? It's literally your job is to be around people 24/7, but yet you don't like being around people. Don't do the fucking job. It's crazy because the only way you can be good at our job is knowing people. And like you said, it's like when your partner comes home from a day's work, when you see them, if they're pissed, you don't keep pushing them like, you know, what's wrong? You know, you just leave them alone. You know when to leave them alone. You know when to give them a hug. You know when to say what's up. Just like your clients, like you said, if they come in, you can see them. They need a chat. You're gonna have a chat. They might need a good cry for 10 minutes, and then we go and train because they've got it all out. As you said, or it's like that. You might have someone who you chat to a lot, but in this session, they just want to put their headphones in, do the deadlift, take the advice of how to change the technique, and just get on with it. They don't want to chat that session. But you have to know that to get the best out of people. And that's where I think that's when you call yourself a coach in a sense, because you're coaching them now. You're helping them through things rather than just being, you know, that person who says what to do. And I think that's the biggest thing I think we keep going back to is that knowing people in stress and knowing when to push, when to pull back.
Yeah. So going on to one topic before I ask a closing question for you that I'm intrigued about. One of the things I've seen and witnessed your journey from when we worked together up until now, other than the most striking thing I've seen, other than the bleached blonde hair, all the pink and yellow clothing, is you relearned to run. And like both of us were fairly competitive sprinters. Both of us used to run. Both of us got to a position, and I'm still there, too battered to do it properly. What was this process like from you, from being a runner to not really being able to run? And how did you learn to do all the sprints that you do now?
Okay, that's kind of a hard one to answer because again, that's kind of individual, because that depends on where your limitations are. Like
what about for you?
My limitations were my left Achilles, and my rotation were my main two issues for me to get back in, and what caused me to always kind of start and then stop and start and hold me back. So what most people are going to struggle with which is what most people are going to struggle with who have done lots of weights, whatever, say, is going to be the elasticity of my stuff. So like the Achilles, like bouncing, their foot positions, we're gonna be very rigid. Our feet are probably gonna be very rigid. We need our feet to be quite fluid, like adaptable, but also strong. Most people being in a gym are wearing kind of like, squat shoes or wearing kind of shoes to support and give support. They're going to be probably an externally rotated position. So they need to work on it. We need to work through some bit more internal rotation. And the Achilles, we won't be able to do plyometrics. So when we're landing, we're going to be a lot using our calves. That's why so many people have knee issues or calf issues when they go back to jogging or running or sprinting.
Yeah.
Because what's happened is we've lost the coordination of contraction. So this is the thing, when you're lifting weights, you're obviously lifting, but when you're running, we need the co-contraction. We need our calf to basically hold our foot into a position, like an isometric position. Our legs kind of like quite isometric. Our knee positions are like pretty much in an isometric position, and our calves kind of will be, because you're hitting our forefoot. And what we want is the Achilles to do its job, to kind of have that rebound. So you take the elastic, stretch, recoil, stretch and recoil, and that's what most people are lacking, because when they start to run, they're going to be using their calves a lot, which is very inefficient. And that's why they cramp up very quickly, or they pull something very quickly, because they're not doing their job. It's not saying they're weak, it's what they call the coordination's wrong, or the hamstring goes because you're overusing it to stabilize the pelvis or something. Or the foot, like one of my issues, like I said, it was the fact I lost that coordination, but also because my foot stuck in quite an externally rotated position. So I've got to try and I've had to do a lot of work on my feet to mobilize them so I can get some internal rotation and pronation. That's been a big thing of mine, of getting my feet to work properly. Like you talk about the breathing, I went through a lot of my breathing stuff a lot. Now I'm getting quite big into my feet, and how to get the feet kind of moving. And yeah, I would say most people, they need to start off doing some light plyometrics. And when I say light plyometrics, skipping. And what you'll find is when you start skipping, you'll just feel it a lot in your calves. That's because you're basically doing calf raises instead of actually having the foot. Instead of using the Achilles, you're using the calf. And that's the biggest thing to start with. Start doing low plyometrics. So you start just doing pogos, which is just basically like skipping but without the rope. Then start doing one leg pogos, and then start kind of doing pogos to the side, forward and back, and unilateral, and just basically very low level. Like before I do leg training, I just do 5-10 minutes of that, just to keep, especially in the winter when I'm not running much, or now for the next 5 months I won't be doing much. I want to keep this kind of like, I want to keep that ability for my body to do that throughout the winter. So using low level stuff is great. There's also drills I use for co-contractions, because really when you're sprinting, it's different to jogging. This is the thing, like, I don't jog. I fucking hate it. It's boring as fuck. I like to sprint. So I'm going to be more my forefoot a lot more. So that's when I hit the ground pretty much when my foot is going to be near enough underneath me. My foot's going to hit the floor. My pretty much kind of like foot and my knee stays near enough in the same position, and I'm going to drive through my glutes. That means I need to have a coordination between my quads, my calves, and my hammies working together to keep that kind of isometric co-contraction kind of going on. And then, so I've got drills for that as well, so we can improve that. And then the last thing I had to do was to improve my rotation through my upper body, because obviously sprinting is a lot of elbow drive. And what you're going to find is my low back would stiffen up, because if I'm not rotating through my thoracic, rotation drives extension in the hips. So if you can't rotate, you won't get much extension going through your hips. So when I wasn't rotating properly, my low back would stiffen up. So the more I learned to rotate my thoracic, the less my back took strain, and I got better hip extension. So that's kind of like my progression through it, and what I've got to make sure I keep throughout the next few months. But yeah.
That's interesting, especially like I never even looked into the Achilles stuff, but that makes total sense in terms of like, it's something that certainly if you've been used to bodybuilding, you're not training any of this stuff. You're not training any connective tissue. You're not used to impact. You're used to very sagittal plane static style movements, and it makes sense why the calf comes
It's not so much about static plane or static sagittal plane stuff. It's more, you've got inter and intramuscular control, and when you're bodybuilding, you're training intermuscular control, where you're kind of really focused on how that muscle works, but you're not teaching your body to work as one. It's what we spoke about right at the beginning. There's nothing wrong with either, like doing whatever you want to do. You basically, whatever the fuck you want to do in the gym that you have fun with, who cares? I don't give a fuck. But when it comes to goals and what you want to achieve, you have to realize when you're just using machines or bodybuilding in that way, you're not teaching your body to work as one. We have a very, our system is an amazing thing. And like you can learn how to move and you can learn how to do certain things, you can also dislearn how to move and use certain things. So you just have to it all comes down to how to program stuff, kind of where in your goals is what. And if you don't want to run, because you don't have to, like everyone says you don't have to fucking squat, you don't have to run, don't have to jog, never have to in your whole fucking life. You don't want to. You can get all your cardio stuff on a bike, on a rower, ski erg, whatever. You don't have to run. So we don't need to learn all this. But if you want to run and you want to sprint or whatever, you do have to teach your body how to move again. And that's a simple fact of things. And it's not a bad thing or a good thing. And just saying, it's whatever your goal is. And, you know, like gymnastics is you learn how to use your body as one. So yeah, it's just depending on your goal, depending on your client's goal and what you want to achieve. But yeah, you have to just learn in a simplistic way of how to use your body again. And that's it. But sprinting is probably one of our most primal movements.
So I'm going to ask you one last question before we end of play here today. I'm intrigued by this because you've gone through an educational journey over the last 25 years worth of education plus. Tell me something that you used to feel certain about that you've now changed your mind on.
Fucking hell. That's a hard one. Because I was thinking there's so many. I'm just trying to. The problem is I've been through so much. I'm trying to think what I thought 5 years ago, if you know what I mean. I'm trying to think. I'm not saying I haven't learned. Like, I sound like a right douche. But I'm trying to just think what was I thinking 5 years ago, because I've been through so much. The only thing I think, I think the main thing probably would be, I don't know if it's like I knew for certain, but I thought I knew for certain, but I think it'd be more, I think the biggest thing I've changed is more, there's a million ways to skin a cat and the whole stress side of things. Like in the old days of they just don't want it enough. It's that's probably, if looking back, I said there's probably other stuff. And if we were speaking, it'll just, like when you've been asked something, if you slipped that in earlier in a different manner, I probably would have answered it slightly different, because when you get, when you get asked something, it's like, fuck, you got to think about it. But my brain's gone dead. So what I would say is just the only thing, not so much I thought and didn't think, but the main thing what I have learned over the last few years is way more about people and how stress affects the body so much, and not like, okay, if they're not achieving it, it's obviously they don't want it enough. There's more to that puzzle. And it's more down to you as a coach to put it out to someone and to work out why they're not doing X, Y, Z. I know it's not quite the answer, But that's just when you put it on the spot, my brain just went, oh shit.
No, I love it.
I'm gonna have to
No, I think it's important. I think it's important.
Yeah, mate, it is. But as I said, I've been through so much of me has changed over the last 5 years. I'm just don't know what I used to think, if that makes sense.
I remember looking back just before you left our last place of work, and you were talking about like, I've written a beginner program so much now that I don't know what I would do if I got a more advanced person. Like I could do it, I could work it out, but you were like, I'm just so used to writing beginner programs. And one of the things I've learned through doing your course twice is that you had a lot of tools in your toolbox. You forgot most of the tools by doing one tool a lot, and now you've got more tools than you've ever had before. And I think that's very clear in everything you do, from your social media, from your courses. And I'm sure at some point I'm jumping on level 2 because I want to learn more about this. So for anyone who wants to learn more about all the tools that are in Nick Daniel's toolbox and want to do either level 1 or level 2 and tell us about level 2, where can people find you?
So Nick the Rebel Coach, Nick the _ Rebel Coach, is where everyone can find me. And that's if you like watching stories, lots of sausage dogs and deadlifts. Yeah, I try and put as much as I can on there. But yeah, my mentorship, my level 1 16-week mentorship is actually growing next year. So I'm now adding an extra lecture. So each week we go through a lecture which builds upon. So we start with breathing, exactly what Simon was talking about, the diaphragm and how that affects everything. And then from there, we work our way out. So we work our way down from the thorax, down into the pelvis, low back and pelvis, down to SI, down into the legs, back up to the shoulders, and how it all kind of comes together. But each week, what we're going to do is have a lecture like later on about that lecture. So I'll be down in the gym and we'll go through the exercises I spoke about, assessments. We'll go through any case studies or anything kind of you guys are having issues with that week. So yeah, I took this on, I tried it with a client, but I couldn't do this. Any ideas? I want it to be more, not just me talking, but everyone else go, well, I tried this, I tried that. And we can have like a workshop on each week.
Love that.
And so we can actually go into stuff a bit more. And then the second half of it, the last 7 weeks or whatever it is, goes on the physiology side of it. So many people learn about, okay, breathing mechanics, but what actually is going on in the respiratory system? Okay, what about heart rate and blood pressure? What is it? Why do people, so many people go, oh, yeah, I'm going to take your blood pressure. Okay, but if you say, why is your blood pressure bad? No one can fucking answer that. Why are we doing breathing exercises? No one can answer that. So it goes into the physiology of why you're doing stuff and why you're doing X, Y, Z. And then we finish off with a little bit of programming. So yeah, that's, like I said, I want that to give more into that. My level 1. So that's what level 1 is going to be next year, building on that. And then level 2 goes into, it's kind of like building at the moment, but yeah, it went into, I go into tissues and healing and injuries and how to, what to expect from that. So when you have clients, to go into that. That's cool. And then that kind of moves into the nervous system, actually how the nervous system works. That goes into pain, how pain works, chronic and acute. And then after we hit that for a few weeks, so you're learning, taking a bit what we learned on level 1 a bit further, a bit deeper. And then the foot, actually about the foot and gait and how to implement that into training. One thing everyone can always get from my seminar, I try not to be, I just hate courses what mean you don't know how to implement. As in, I want to be like, okay, you talk about the foot for an hour, but what the fuck does that mean to me? Okay, well, when you do a split squat, we need to do this. When you're doing this, we're doing that. Okay, internal rotation, we're going to do a split squat, we're going to do it like this to increase our foot position and increase this. We want to I like everything people learn from me is you can basically put to practice the next day with your clients, and it's about training. It's not about fucking being in rehab. It's not about you see these trainers fucking on the floor for like an hour. I'm trying to give you stuff that you can use straight away and why you're using it and how you can change how you can change an exercise to elicit a change which you're trying to get, including gait and the foot. And then into a couple of lectures on hypertrophy. And then a few case studies to finish off with. That's kind of level 2's building into. But again, it's all building into massive lectures. It could just all be a level 1. It might just all be I'm going to get bonus lectures on nutrition and everything. It's just going to grow into a huge, I don't know, 60, 70 hours worth of lectures, and I'll just see what I do with it.
Pay for a year up front to become like a university course, mate. So it sounds good, and I could vouch for level 1. Level 1 is definitely one of the best investments I've ever made in my coaching career. So anyone looking at this wants to learn more about this stuff, definitely go follow Nick. You will not regret it.
Cheers, bro.
Mate, thank you very much again, mate. Very much enjoyed that. Thank you for coming on the show.
Nah, no issue. It's been a pleasure.
Hey guys, thank you very much for watching the podcast. If you're like me and like to binge watch podcast episodes, click here for our most recent episode. And if you enjoy the show and want to be updated when new videos come live, click here to subscribe to the channel.